Bella. I stood frozen in the doorway, watching the scene unfold before me with a mix of shock and fascination, my attention fixed on the tense exchange between Luna and Alexander. Luna's face was a mask of outrage, her eyes blazing with anger as she confronted Alexander. Her slender figure seemed to vibrate with indignation, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. "How could you do this to her, Alexander?" she demanded, her voice low and menacing, each word dripping with venom. "You claim to love her, but you have no qualms about putting your hands on her? And what about your unborn child? Do you even care about its well-being?" Alexander took a step forward, his face reddening as he tried to defend himself. His eyes darted nervously around the room, as if searching for an escape or a witness to corroborate his side of the story. But before he could even utter a word, Luna's hand shot out, slapping him across the face with a resounding crack. The sound echoed through the room, making me flinch. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I watched the scene unfold. Alexander's head snapped to the side, his cheek flushing with anger and humiliation. He took a step back, his eyes blazing with fury, but Luna stood her ground, her eyes flashing with defiance. "You have no right to speak," Luna spat, her chest heaving with anger. "You've shown your true colors, Alexander, and I won't stand for it." "I didn't mean to. It happened in the spur of the moment." Alexander defended himself. As the tension in the room began to dissipate, Luna's expression transformed from one of anger to calculation. She took a deep breath, her eyes narrowing as she gazed at Alexander. "I propose a political alliance between our packs," she said, her voice dripping with diplomacy. "A union between Ashwood and Cadaretmouth would be beneficial for both our families, and I'm willing to put aside our differences for the sake of my children's future. I don't want Layla to suffer from the bond." As Luna spoke, I caught a glimpse of something flickering in Alexander's eyes. It was a fleeting moment, but it seemed like a spark of excitement, or maybe even triumph. Before I could process what I had seen, Alexander's expression smoothed out, and he nodded in agreement. Luna's gaze lingered on Alexander for a moment, as if searching for any sign of hesitation. But Alexander's face remained neutral, his eyes fixed on Luna with an unnerving intensity. Luna's attention turned to the terms of the alliance, her voice firm as she laid out the rules. "Alexander, you will ensure Layla's safety and well-being above all else. You will be obedient to her wishes, and you will not harm her in any way." I watched in surprise as Alexander nodded, his expression meek. It was almost as if he was trying to prove himself, to show Luna that he was worthy of her trust. But I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off. That Alexander's easy agreement was just a ruse, a clever ploy to get what he wanted. I felt a shiver run down my spine, but I pushed the feeling aside, telling myself I was just being paranoid. I couldn't help but wonder what Alexander's true intentions were. Was he genuinely committed to the alliance, or was he hiding something? I glanced at Luna, but her expression was inscrutable, giving away nothing. I bit back a sigh, feeling a familiar frustration simmering beneath the surface. It was a feeling I'd grown all too accustomed to over the small period of time that I retired to Ashwood Pack. The feeling of being overshadowed by Layla, of being relegated to the background while my mother fawned over her. As I watched Luna's solicitous behavior towards Layla, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of resentment. Why did Layla always get the special treatment? Why did my mother always seem to prioritize her needs above mine? But I pushed the thoughts aside, reminding myself of the past. I'd spoken out before, and it had only led to trouble. My mother had made it clear that Layla was the favored child, and that I was just a less important daughter. I didn't want to rock the boat, not now. So I kept my mouth shut, biting back the bitter words that threatened to spill out. I'd learned to pick my battles, and this wasn't one I was willing to fight. At least, not yet. Layla was still sprawled out on the floor, clutching her belly and milking the drama for all it was worth. But before anyone could react, Hunter appeared out of the shadows, his eyes fixed on Layla, with a mixture of disdain and annoyance. Without breaking stride, Hunter stepped on Layla's hand, his foot coming down on her delicate fingers with a sickening crunch. Layla's eyes went wide, and she let out a blood-curdling scream, her voice echoing off the walls as she scrambled to her feet. The room fell silent, with everyone staring at Layla in shock and horror. But as we watched, frozen in anticipation of the worst, Layla's face transformed from one of agony to one of nothing. No pain, no discomfort, no signs of distress whatsoever. It was as if she had simply been playing a role, and now that the scene was over, she could drop the act. The realization dawned on us all at the same time, and the room erupted into a chorus of gasps and shocked whispers. Layla's eyes darted around the room, a hint of a smile playing on her lips as she seemed to savor the attention. And then, in a move that left us all stunned, she brushed off her clothes and smiled sweetly at Alexander, who looked like he'd just been punched in the gut. The air in the room seemed to vibrate with tension as Hunter and Layla faced off against each other. Hunter's eyes blazed with contempt, his voice dripping with disdain as he sneered at Layla. "You're pathetic," he spat, his words cutting deep. "You're so desperate for attention and validation that you'll do anything to get it, even if it means pretending to be hurt." Layla's face flushed with anger, her eyes flashing with indignation. "I'm not pathetic," she hissed, her voice venomous. "I'm a woman who knows what she wants and isn't afraid to go after it. And what I want is to be the alpha female of Ashwood Park. And I'll get it too, once I'm married to Alexander." She took a step towards Hunter. "You should be grateful to me, Luna. My marriage to Alexander will bring benefits to Ashwood Park that you can't even begin to imagine. I'll be an asset to this pack, unlike some people who shall remain nameless." Her gaze flicked to me, her eyes glinting with malice. "Unlike Bella, who's nothing but a liability. She's a weak link, a vulnerability that our pack can't afford to have, but I'll be the one to bring strength and prosperity to Ashwood Park. And you'll all be grateful to me for it." Layla's voice grew louder, her words tumbling out in a frantic bid to assert her dominance. "Cataract is the biggest and most powerful back in California," she exclaimed, her eyes flashing with defiance. "And Alexander's pack is on par with Ashwood's in terms of strength and influence." Ralph's laughter was immediate, a deep, rumbling sound that seemed to shake the very foundations of the room. "Oh, Layla, you know not what you speak, do you? You're shameless!" he exclaimed, his eyes shining with amusement. "You'll stop at nothing to get what you want, won't you?" Layla's face turned bright red with rage, her eyes blazing with fury. "I'm not shameless," she spat, her voice venomous. "Bella's the shameless one. She's always managed to steal everything I've worked hard for. She's a manipulative little. Layla's words trailed off, her eyes narrowing as she gazed at me with a malevolent glare. "Even in college, she seduced Alexander, trying to steal him away from me. But miraculously, I was able to take him back from her. And now she's trying to ruin my happiness again, trying to drive a wedge between Alexander and me." The room fell silent. The only sound was the heavy breathing of the people around me. I felt my face grow hot with anger, my heart pounding in my chest. Layla's words were a blatant lie, a twisted version of the truth that she had concocted to suit her own purposes. Just as I was about to respond to Layla's vicious accusations, Kai burst into the room, a confident smile spreading across his face. His eyes locked onto mine, and I felt a flutter in my chest as he began to speak. "I think I can shed some light on the situation," Kai said, his voice calm and authoritative. "Bella's not trying to ruin Layla's happiness. She's just jealous of Layla's achievements." He paused, his gaze never leaving mine, or at least that's what it seems like from the outside. I felt my eyes widen in shock, but before I could protest, Kai continued. "Luna, I think you should see this," he said, pulling out his phone and handing it to my mother. Luna's eyes scanned the screen, and a slow smile spread across her face. "Bella, I had no idea," she said, her voice filled with pride. "You've been making waves in the medical field. You solved that high-profile heart problem case, and you're trending on the internet. People are raving about your skills as a doctor." I felt my face grow hot with embarrassment, but I couldn't help feeling a sense of pride and accomplishment. Luna's eyes met mine, and for a moment I thought I saw a glimmer of affection there, but it was quickly replaced by her usual reserved expression. Ralph's voice cut through the silence, his tone gruff. "Kai, what are you doing here?" he asked, his eyes narrowing slightly. Kai's smile grew wider, his eyes locked on mine. "I've come to propose to Bella," he said, his voice filled with emotion. I love her, and I want to spend the rest of my life with her. I've been watching her, and I'm amazed by her strength, her courage, and her beauty. She's the most incredible woman I've ever met, and I know that I want to be with her forever. The room fell silent, with all eyes fixed on Kai and me. I felt my heart racing, my mind reeling with shock and surprise. Propose? Was Kai being serious right now? Bella. The room fell silent, with all eyes fixed on Kai and me. I felt my heart racing, my mind reeling with shock and surprise. Propose? Was Kai being serious right now? I turned to look at my mother. Her forehead was slightly creased, a mix of confusion and surprise etched across her features. The silence was the kind that wasn't just empty but thick, like something invisible had coiled itself around the air and squeezed. My mother stared at Kai with eyes sharp enough to cut glass. The proposal he had laid bare moments earlier seemed to echo against the ornate walls, rebounding louder each time it hit my ears. My breath thickened as no one spoke. I didn't even know what to say. The mansion that was supposedly big became smaller than the walls of a microscopic organism. If Alexander demanded attention, Kai was the attention. The way he spoke, so confident, so suave that even Luna, who was known to be a force to be reckoned with, could only stare at her. Future son-in-law? I stood frozen, my mind scrambling to make sense of Kai's offer. I didn't know what to make of it. Could I even make sense of it? Are you serious? Quinn's voice finally sliced through the silence. She was rarely at a loss for words, but the shock had temporarily robbed her of her ability to mask her emotions. My mother opened her mouth to say something, maybe ask me something, but all that was just a flash in the pan when Layla started to stir. I turned instinctively towards her, who was clutching her stomach again, wincing as if her body had been torn apart from the inside. I'm in pain, Layla groaned, her voice cracking under the strain. The four brothers, Xavier, Hunter, Ralph, and Lennon, reacted instantly. Ralph, the eldest and most commanding of the quadruplets, stepped in front of Layla protectively, while Lennon reached for her shoulder. "It's probably nothing," Ralph murmured to no one in particular, though the flicker of doubt in his tone betrayed his uncertainty. "It's nothing," I said sharply. My concern for Layla, though begrudging, was as non-existent as her supposed love for my mother. "Enough," Luna snapped, her composure cracking like glass beneath the weight of the moment. "Get her to the hospital." "It's nothing. She's pretending. You can't just believe what she says because she says it." Hunter's nostrils flared, taken aback by his mother's reaction. "Hunter, I am your mother and I am saying..." "Mom, we are your children, not her. Whose side are you fucking on?" Xavier yelled and Lennon grabbed his shoulder, cautioning lowly, "Language, Xavier." "Unbelievable. She has been your sister for years even though she is not related to you and you want to watch her die?" Mother's brows furrowed, her accusatory glare cutting through the brothers. Layla needed treatment if she wasn't faking it. My eyes flickered to the moaning girl on the floor, eyeing her. All of this was just an act, but I said nothing, even though my fists were clenched at my sides. Why wasn't I just as important to my mother as Layla was? Was I worthless to her? What did I mean to her? I inhaled sharply, blinking back the tears threatening to fall as my mother's concern for another person shattered me like glass. "Mother," Xavier started, but Quinn raised a hand to silence him. "Do as I say." Her voice rang with authority. I blinked, then turned toward Luna, expecting to see relief that Layla was being attended to, but what met her was far more venomous. Mother's glare was now fixed on me. "What did I do now?" "This is your fault," Luna said coldly, her words laced with an accusation I could hardly believe. Was she being fucking for real? "The moment you showed up here, everything started falling apart. You are a curse to this family. You walked in and everything started to crumble." I staggered back a step as if physically struck. "What are you talking about?" I breathed. I was being physically attacked, but where was the question? My soul was clenching onto the memories of the care she once had for me so desperately that I could feel my mind start to fall apart. "Don't pretend you don't know," she spat. "Layla is sick, Kai is making reckless proposals, and my family is crumbling because of you. My birth mother was accusing me of doing something so deplorable that it all felt like a dream to me. This wasn't real." "I didn't do anything," I shouted, my voice cracking with emotion. Why are you blaming me for everything? Why are you always so harsh with me? What did I ever do to you? You throw accusations at me when you didn't even use any opportunity to try and know me." Luna advanced, her presence towering over me like a storm cloud. "Know you?" The words tasted foreign in my mother's mouth. "Know how jinxed you are? Know the viciousness your mere presence carried? How could you? After everything I did for you, after I carried you, brought you into this world, and welcomed you back with open arms, even knowing how despicable you could have turned out to be, but I gave you a chance, yet you repay me by sowing discord in my home." "I didn't ask to be born," I shouted back, tears streaming down my face now. The room was a blur of motion as my brothers exchanged tense glances, their loyalty split between their mother and sister. "Bella," Hunter began softly, but Luna's wrath drowned out all other voices. "You are selfish, Bella," Luna said, her tone biting. "A child who never understood how much pain she caused." My chest tightened and my breaths grew shallow. I tried to speak, tried to defend myself, but the words caught in my throat. My gaze swung toward her brothers, silently pleading for someone to step in. The betrayal burned in my veins. "What did I ever do to you?" I whispered, my voice breaking. "You act like I'm nothing to you." Using the word "like" was extending grace. I was nothing to her. I should have never come back. My eyes stung, the dam almost breaking, but my heart was already shedding tears for me. "Stop!" Luna snapped. "You don't get to play the victim." "No," I cried out, my anguish spilling over. Enough was enough. She didn't get to treat me like this after everything I had been through and survived. "You treat me like I don't matter, like I'm not even your daughter. I'd rather not have a mother at all than have one who hates me this much." "You don't mean that, Bells. You don't." Xavier tried to reason with me, but I shook my head vehemently, the tears spilling over. "I would rather jump off a cliff than be brought back to life to do it 1,000 times and feel the pain every fucking time than have you as my mother," I repeated firmly, rage radiating off of me. The room fell deathly silent again. Luna's face hardened, but for a moment something flickered behind her gaze. Guilt? Pain? I couldn't tell, and I didn't care. Then Luna's hand rose, so fast I couldn't move to stop it. The sound of the slap cracked through the air like a gunshot. My head snapped to the side, my cheek stinging from the blow. I stumbled backward, my vision swimming. For the first time since entering the house, I felt like I couldn't breathe. I couldn't always breathe, but right now I was being suffocated, and breathing was the most painful task. My chest heaved as my lungs seemed to constrict, my pulse pounding in my ears. I tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. The world tilted dangerously around me, my legs giving way as a wave of panic overtook her. "Bella!" Lennon shouted, rushing forward just as I crumpled to the ground. In the chaos that followed, Luna's face went pale as she staggered back, clutching at her chest. "Mother?" Xavier exclaimed, his voice rising with alarm. Luna gasped once, and then her knees buckled. She collapsed where she stood, her figure sinking to the floor with a heavy thud. "Luna!" Ralph cried, dropping to her side. I could barely process what was happening. My body felt numb, my mind still spinning from the panic attack that had gripped me. She could only feel arms wrapping around me, pulling me close. It's okay, Bella," Hunter whispered, stroking my hair as Lennon hovered protectively nearby. She hit me," I murmured brokenly, my voice muffled against Hunter's shoulder. "Shh, we know," Lennon said, his voice soft but thick with anger. "We're here," Xavier added from nearby, though his tone was tense. He glanced back at our mother, now surrounded by Ralph and a doctor who had been hastily summoned. The brothers remained close, their collective presence a shield against the chaos unfolding around them. "Bella," Hunter said softly, pulling back to look into my tear-streaked face. "Listen to me. I know how it looks right now, but Mother isn't heartless." "She hit me," I repeated, my voice fragile. "I know," Hunter murmured again, "but you don't know the whole story. She isn't angry because of you. She's angry at herself." I blinked, my confusion evident. "What? She cries," Lennon chimed in, kneeling beside me. "Late at night, when she thinks no one can hear her, she cries over your baby things." I stared at him, stunned. "Why? Because she feels guilty," Xavier said, his voice calm and low. He stood with his arms crossed, his usual stoicism giving way to something more vulnerable. "She blames herself for everything that happened to you. for not being able to give you the life you deserved. That's not an excuse, I said weakly, though my voice had lost its fire. It's not, Hunter agreed, but it's the truth. Layla, she's not a replacement for you, Bella. Mother clings to her because it's her way of coping. I shook my head, fresh tears spilling down my cheeks. I don't understand any of this. You're not alone, Lennon said, squeezing my hand. We're your brothers. We'll always stand by you. I allowed myself to lean into their comfort, the strength of their bond holding me up where my grief threatened to drag me down. But the fragile moment was interrupted by Kai stepping into the room, his presence commanding as ever. Enough, he said firmly, his gaze sweeping over the disarray. His eyes lingered on Beamy, softening slightly as he approached her. This has gone on long enough. What are you doing? Xavier asked, stepping forward as if to block Kai's path. I'm taking her with me, Kai replied evenly, his tone leaving no room for argument. She doesn't belong in this madness. You can't, Lennon began, but I surprised them all by rising shakily to my feet. I want to go, I said softly, my voice trembling but resolute. Hunter looked at me with clear hesitation. Bella, it's fine, I whispered. I can't stay here, not now. Kai moved to my side, placing a reassuring hand on my shoulder. You don't have to explain yourself, he murmured. My brothers exchanged worried glances but said nothing as Kai guided me out of the room. The weight of their gazes followed me, but none of them tried to stop me. The moment the doors closed behind us, I let out a shaky breath, as if I'd been holding it in for far too long. Kai looked down at me, his expression softening. You don't have to endure this anymore, he said gently. I'll give you the family you've always deserved. I glanced up at him, my tears still streaking my face, but for the first time in days I felt like maybe, just maybe, I could forgive Kai and we could have something. Bella. I let Kai's arms envelop me, his warmth and strength a comforting shield against the turmoil that had erupted in the mansion. I sobbed uncontrollably, my body shaking with each ragged breath. As I cried, I watched through tear-blurred eyes as my mother was escorted out of the room by my brothers, Xavier, Hunter, Ralph, and Lennon. Layla, who had been clutching her stomach in agony just moments before, now walked alongside them, her face pale, but her eyes gleaming with a triumphant light that made my blood boil. I felt a surge of anger and resentment towards Layla, who seemed to be manipulating everyone around her, including my mother. But as I looked up at Kai, I saw the concern etched on his face, and my anger gave way to a deep sadness. I felt lost and alone, unsure of what the future held, or how to navigate the treacherous waters of my family's dynamics. Kai's arms tightened around me, holding me close as I continued to sob. I felt a sense of safety and security in his embrace, and for a moment I let myself forget about everything else and just be present in the moment. Everything is going to be all right, Kai said, his voice calm and reassuring. I shook my head, feeling a surge of frustration. How can you say that? I asked, my voice rising. You just show up out of nowhere and expect everything to be okay? Kai's expression remained calm, but he didn't respond to my question. Instead, he said, I know you're upset right now, but let's leave. We can talk when you feel better. I felt my anger boil over at his suggestion. How could he think that I would just leave with him after everything that had just happened? Didn't he understand the complexity of the situation? You're contradicting yourself. My wolf sneered, and I ignored her, focusing my gaze on Kai. How dare you come to my house and ask for my hand in marriage? I demanded, my voice trembling with rage. You read the room, you saw how messed up everything is, and yet you still had the nerve to propose to me? You keep adding to my problems. For goodness sake, let me fucking be. I took a step back, my eyes blazing with anger. Do you have any idea what's going on here? Do you have any idea how much pain and hurt there is in this family? Kai's expression didn't change, but he silently watched me, his eyes fixed intently on mine. He didn't say a word, but his silence was deafening, making me feel even more angry and vulnerable. I felt like I was going to explode. Like all the emotions that had been building up inside me were finally going to burst free. I took another step back, my heart racing with anger and hurt. I'm doing everything I can to be with you, Kai said, his voice low and sincere. I scoffed, rolling my eyes in disgust. Save it, Kai, I said, my voice dripping with bitterness. My biggest mistake was pinning my hopes on others. It's caused me way too much pain and suffering. I inhaled, my eyes flashing with anger. And you think I'm just gonna forget everything and jump into a relationship with you? You think I'm that easy? I shook my head, my voice rising. We have so much tension and unresolved issues between us. The Mabel situation, for starters. How can I even consider a bond with you when there's so much unresolved between us? I crossed my arms, my eyes blazing with determination. I'm done relying on others to make me happy. I'm done getting hurt. I looked at Kai, my eyes searching for any sign of understanding. If there's ever going to be a thing between us in the future, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, I'd want it to be on mutual understanding and unwavering choice. No more expectations, no more assumptions, just a clear and honest decision to be together. Kai nodded, his eyes locked on mine. I'm willing to wait as long as it'll take, he said, his voice filled with a quiet determination. I felt a small sense of relief wash over me, but it was quickly replaced by a sense of overwhelm. I needed space, air to breathe, and time to process everything that had happened. Thank you, I muttered, turning to head out of the house. I didn't look back, didn't wait to see if Kai would follow me. I just kept walking, my feet carrying me away from the chaos and confusion that had consumed my life. I stepped out of the cab and onto the sidewalk, my eyes scanning the crowded street until I spotted a dimly lit bar. I pushed open the door and stepped inside, the sounds of laughter and clinking glasses enveloping me like a warm hug. I made my way to the bar, sliding onto a stool and catching the bartender's eye. Whiskey, neat, I said, my voice firm. Just as the bartender was about to pour my drink, a voice behind me said, Well, 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 look what we have here, the heiress with no class, slumming it in a dive bar. I turned to see Max, a smirk spreading across his face as he took in my disheveled appearance. Coming to get wasted, princess? He sneered. How quaint. I felt a surge of anger at his mocking tone, but I bit back my retort, not wanting to engage with him. Instead, I turned back to the bartender and said, Make it a double. Max's eyes seemed to gleam with malice as he continued to taunt me, his words dripping with condescension. He leaned in close, his breath hot against my ear, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. I tried to pull away, but he held me fast, his fingers wrapping around my wrist like a vice. You're so predictable, Bella, he whispered, his voice low and menacing. You think you're so strong, so independent, but you're not. You're just a weak little girl who can't even take care of herself. I felt a surge of anger at his words, but I tried to keep my cool. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of getting under my skin. But as he continued to taunt me, his words cutting deep into my psyche, I felt my resolve begin to crumble. I downed my drink in one swift motion, the whiskey burning my throat as I tried to drown out the sound of Max's voice. But even as I stood up to leave, Max's hand shot out and grasped mine, his fingers wrapping around my wrist like a vice. You're mine, Bella, he whispered, his breath hot against my ear. I was your first love, and you'll never forget me. If I hadn't dumped you, who knows, you might have never found your biological mother and your brothers. I felt a wave of revulsion wash over me as Max's words dripped with possessiveness. He leaned in closer, his lips brushing against my ear. I'll leave Layla for you, Bella. I'll do whatever it takes to be with you. As he pulled me into an embrace, his hands touching me in ways that made my skin crawl, I felt a desperate need to escape. My body began to shift, my senses heightening as I let my wolf take over. I felt my bones begin to shift, my muscles stretching and contorting as I transformed into my wolf form. Max's eyes widened in surprise as he stumbled backward, releasing his grip on me. I took advantage of the distraction, using my newfound freedom to turn and run, my paws pounding the floor as I made a desperate bid for escape. As I stood there, my wolf form towering over Max, I saw his eyes widen in realization. You were my mate? He spat, his voice filled with anger and betrayal. You rejected me? I watched in horror as the realization on his features morphed into something darker, his eyes blazing with fury. He took a step closer to me, his hands reaching out to seize me by force. I raised my claws, ready to defend myself, but before I could even react, Kai appeared out of nowhere, his movements swift and silent. He pinned Max to the ground, his hands holding Max's wrists in a tight grip. What the fuck? K.I. I gently guided Bella through the hospital doors, my arm wrapped around her waist to support her. She insisted she was fine, but I knew better. The way she winced with every step, the way her eyes seemed to cloud over with pain, she was far from fine. "Come on, Bella, just a little farther," I coaxed, trying to keep her moving. "I'm fine, Kai," she said, her voice tight with annoyance. "You don't have to hold me." "I'm not letting you go," I replied, my arm tightening around her waist. "You're not fine, Bella. You're hurt." She shot me a look, but I just raised an eyebrow. "Don't even try to deny it," I said. "I can see it in your eyes." Bella sighed, but she didn't argue anymore. Instead, she just leaned into me, letting me support her weight. As we waited for the nurses to come and take her for her tests, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. What if I hadn't gone after her? What if I hadn't found her in time? The thought sent a chill down my spine, and I found myself tapping my feet impatiently against the floor. I just wanted to get her sorted out, to make sure she was okay. Finally, the nurses came to take her away. I stood up, my eyes never leaving Bella's face. "I'll be right here," I told her, trying to reassure her. Bella nodded, her eyes searching mine. "I'll be fine, Kai," she said, her voice soft. I nodded, trying to smile. "I'll be right here," I repeated. As she went with the nurses, I sat back down, my mind beginning to wander. What if? The thought kept echoing in my head, refusing to be silenced. I tapped my feet impatiently against the floor, my eyes fixed on the door where Bella had disappeared. I just wanted her to be okay. I just wanted to know that she was okay. My mind was a jumble of emotions, anger, possessiveness, and a deep-seated need for revenge. How dare Max lay his hands on Bella? The thought sent a wave of fury coursing through my veins. I could feel my wolf stirring, its hackles raised in outrage. My eyes narrowed, my jaw clenched in determination. Max was going to regret the day he ever laid eyes on Bella. He was going to regret the day he ever touched her. I would make sure of it. After a few minutes, I started to wonder why it was taking so long for Bella to come out. I had expected her to be done with her tests by now, but there was no sign of her. My anxiety began to spike, and I felt a growing sense of unease. I got up from my seat and headed to the receptionist, my long strides eating up the distance. "Excuse me," I said, my voice firm but polite. "Bella, she was brought in for some tests. Can you tell me where she is?" The receptionist looked up at me, her eyes flicking over my face before she nodded. "She's in Ward 3B, she said. "I can give you the room number if you'd like." I nodded, my jaw clenched in anticipation. "Yes, please." The receptionist told me the room number, and I headed towards the ward, my heart pounding in my chest. As I walked, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Bella should have been out by now, and the fact that she wasn't was making me increasingly anxious. I pushed open the door to the ward and stepped inside. The hospital smells and sounds enveloped me, and I felt a wave of unease wash over me. I hated hospitals, hated the feeling of being trapped and helpless. I made my way down the hallway, my eyes scanning the room numbers until I found the one I was looking for. Room 14. I slowed down as I approached the door, my ears perked up. I could hear voices coming from inside the room. My eyes narrowed, my instincts on high alert. Who was in there with her? And what were they talking about? I felt a surge of protectiveness towards Bella, a desire to shield her from whatever was going on inside that room. I stood there for a moment, frozen in indecision. Part of me wanted to burst into the room and demand to know what was going on, but another part of me was cautioning me to wait, to observe and gather more information before making my move. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself down. I needed to think clearly, to figure out what was going on and how I could best protect Bella. I leaned in closer to the door, my ear pressed against it as I listened intently to the voices on the other side. "You think Kai cares about you?" Elaine sneered, her voice dripping with malice. What the fuck was she doing here? "He doesn't love you, and he doesn't care about you. Just because he brought you to the hospital doesn't prove any point. And it's best if you let this sink into that smart head of yours." My anger simmered just below the surface as I listened to Elaine's words. How dare she? I thought, my fists clenched in rage. But it was the mention of my name that really set me off. Who did Elaine think she was? Questioning my feelings for Bella. I didn't wait to hear Bella's response. I pushed open the door, my eyes blazing with anger. "What are you doing here?" I growled, my voice low and menacing. Elaine turned to face me, a smug look on her face. "I'm telling Bella the truth," she said, her voice dripping with malice. "Someone needs to make her see sense." My anger boiled over, and I took a step closer to Elaine. "You're not welcome here," I snarled, my eyes flashing with fury. "You're not welcome in this pack, or anywhere near me or Bella. You're banished, Elaine. Effective immediately." Elaine's face went white, and she took a step back, her eyes wide with shock. "You can't do that," she stuttered. I smiled, a cold, hard smile. "Oh, but I can," I said, my voice dripping with menace. "And I just did. Now get out, before I make you." Elaine's laughter was like a slap in the face, and my brows creased in confusion. What was she talking about? I thought, my mind racing with questions. "You're not who you think you are, Kai," Elaine said, her eyes glinting with amusement, "and I'm glad Mabel found a mysterious way to run away from you." My confusion deepened, and I felt a growing sense of unease. What was Elaine talking about? I thought, my mind racing with questions. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice low and even. Elaine's smile grew wider, and she took a step closer to me. "Mabel didn't die from a heart disease or during a surgery, Kai," she said, her voice dripping with malice. "She left your pathetic ass for a better life, and I couldn't be more happy for my best friend." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. What was Elaine talking about? Mabel had died, I was sure of it. I had been devastated by her loss, and had spent years grieving for her. But now, Elaine was telling me that it had all been a lie? That Mabel had left me willingly? "I'll take my leave now," she said, walking to the door, but when she held the knob, she turned around, the shit-eating grin on her face causing my blood to boil. "Oh, and fuck you, Kai," she said before walking out the door and slamming it close. I felt my mind reeling, my thoughts spinning out of control. I didn't know what to believe or what to think. All I knew was that I needed to get to the bottom of this, to find out the truth about Mabel's disappearance. As the doctor walked into the room, I was only half listening to what he was saying. My mind was still reeling from Elaine's revelation, and I sent a quick text to my beta, adding him to get more information about Mabel's disappearance. "And the test results show that everything is fine," the doctor was saying. "She just needs to rest, and she'll be back to normal in no time." I nodded absent-mindedly, still trying to process the bombshell that Elaine had just dropped. But as I looked up at the doctor, I saw that he was smiling and looking relieved. "Thank you, doctor," I said, trying to sound grateful. Bella smiled weakly from the bed, and I felt a pang of guilt. I had been so caught up in my own emotions that I had forgotten about her. As the doctor left the room, I turned to Bella and saw that she was watching me with a mixture of sadness and understanding. My wolf suddenly stirred within me. He was calm and steady, a steady presence in the midst of my turmoil. "Focus on Bella," my wolf seemed to be telling me. "She needs you right now. Don't let your own emotions consume you." I took a deep breath, trying to clear my head. My wolf was right. Bella deserved my attention, my care. I couldn't let my own personal demons get in the way of that. I turned to look at Bella, who was watching me with a concerned expression. I felt a pang of guilt for neglecting her, even if it was just for a moment. "Bella, I started to say, feeling a wave of emotion wash over me. But Bella just shook her head and smiled. "Our past isn't our present, Kai," she said. "It's the future that matters." I felt a lump form in my throat as I looked at Bella. I realized that I had been wrong to push her away, wrong to think that staying away from her would be the best decision. "I'm sorry, Bella," I said, my voice cracking with emotion. "I'm sorry for all the pain I've caused you. I was wrong to push you away." Bella's smile softened, and she reached out to take my hand. "We'll get through this, Kai," she said, "together." I leaned in, my lips inches from Bella's, but the door burst open, interrupting us. I turned to see my beta standing there, his expression neutral. "She's alive," he said, his voice low and urgent. I froze, my eyes locked on my beta's face. Mabel, alive, I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I looked at Bella, feeling a pang of apology. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice regretful. "I need to handle this." Bella nodded in understanding, her eyes filled with concern. "Go," she said. "I'll be here when you get back." Immediately, Kai left the room. My phone chimed. I glanced at the screen to see that it was a message from Elaine. Why in the world wouldn't she let me just be? I groaned out loud, clicking on the notification so I could read her mail. It read, "Dear Bella, I hope this email finds you well, or, at the very least, finds you in a state of mind awareness. I'm not sure how much of what's going on you're actually picking up on, but I'll spell it out for you just in case. Kai is not who you think he is. He's not the brooding, tortured soul you've fallen for. He's a master manipulator, and he's been playing you from the start. You think you know what it's like to be with Kai? You have no idea. Mabel, his precious mate, went to great lengths to get away from him. She gave up her wolf, her family, her entire life just to escape him. And that's not even the worst of it. She had to erase her entire identity and start from scratch just to be free of him. That's how much of an evil person Kai is, Bella. He's a monster, and he'll stop at nothing to get what he wants. And what he wants is Mabel. Not you. Mabel. Now that he knows Mabel is alive, you can bet he'll be dropping you like a hot potato. He'll be chasing after her, trying to win her back, and you'll be left in the dust, wondering what hit you. You're not even a blip on his radar, Bella. You're just a distraction, a way for him to pass the time until he can get back to the one he really loves. Don't bother trying to contact me. I'm done with you, and I'm done with this pack. You can have Kai and his lies. I'm out. Ta-ta for now, Elaine. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut as I read Elaine's email. Her words cut deep, and I couldn't help but wonder if there was any truth to them. Was Kai really the monster Elaine made him out to be? I thought back to all the times Kai had pushed me away, only to pull me back in again. The hot and cold behavior, the possessiveness, the anger, it was all so confusing. One minute I thought we were making progress, and the next, doubt would creep in, and I'd wonder if I was just fooling myself. And now that Mabel is alive, would Kai still want me in his life? What if I really was a rebound? What if he would reject me like he did when he initially discovered I was his mate? I looked around the hospital room, feeling a sense of claustrophobia wash over me. I needed to get out of there, to get some space from Kai and his drama. I made a decision on the spot. I was going to leave, to get away from Kai, and figure out what I really wanted. I walked into the hospital, my heart heavy with the decision I had made. I submitted my resignation letter to the HR department, feeling a mix of emotions, relief, anxiety, and uncertainty. Next, I headed to my office to gather my belongings. As I walked down the familiar hallway, I couldn't shake off the feeling that I was being watched. And then I caught his scent. It was unmistakable, a unique blend of earthy and spicy notes that always seemed to make my heart skip a beat. I remembered how he had called my phone repeatedly last night, refusing to give up even when I didn't answer. I had to switch it off eventually, just to get some peace. My instincts told me to get out of there as fast as I could. I quickened my steps, my eyes fixed on the door at the end of the hallway. But before I could reach it, I felt a hand wrap around my wrist, pulling me back. I spun around, already knowing who it was. Kai's eyes locked onto mine, his gaze intense and unyielding. "You're resigning?" Kai asked, his voice laced with surprise and concern. His eyes scanned my face, searching for answers. I nodded, trying to keep my emotions in check. "I need some space, Kai. I need time to gather my thoughts and figure out what I want." Kai's expression turned vulnerable, and for a moment, I felt my resolve wavering. He looked at me with a deep sadness in his eyes, and I could sense the desperation emanating from him. "Bella, you don't have to do this," he said, his voice low and persuasive. "If you have any doubts, we can talk about them and resolve them together. We can work through this, Bella. We can make it work." I shook my head, trying to stay firm. "I just need some space, Kai. I need to be away from you for a while." I tried to pull my wrist out of his grasp, but he held tight. Kai's face fell, and he looked at me with pleading eyes. "Bella, please don't go," he said, his voice cracking with emotion. "I love you, and I want to be with you. My heart belongs to you, not Mabel. Whatever bond we had is over. You're the one I want, Bella." He took a step closer to me, his eyes burning with intensity. "I know I've messed up, Bella. I know I've hurt you, but I promise to make it right. I promise to do whatever it takes to regain your trust and your love." I felt overwhelmed by Kai's words, and I knew I had to get away from him before I lost my resolve. I tried to pull my wrist out of his grasp again, but he held tight. "Kai, please," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Just let me go. I need some time to think, to figure out what I want." But Kai just shook his head, his eyes never leaving mine. "I won't let you go, Bella," he said, his voice firm. "Not until you listen to me, not until you hear me out." I shook my head, still trying to free my wrist from his grasp. Kai's eyes seemed to darken, his pupils dilating as he gazed at me. His expression shifted from vulnerability to something primal and possessive. He reached out and grabbed my chin, his fingers wrapping around it like a vice. "You're mine," he growled, his voice low and menacing, "and you always will be." I felt a shiver run down my spine as I met his gaze. His eyes seemed to bore into mine, and I couldn't decide if what was brewing in me was fear or yearning. His behavior was strange and sudden, and I didn't know how to react. Part of me wanted to pull away, to tell him that I wasn't his to claim, but another part of me, a part that I couldn't quite explain, felt drawn to him, felt a twisted sense of excitement and anticipation. I tried to speak, but my voice caught in my throat. Kai's grip on my chin tightened, his fingers digging into my skin. I felt a spark of pain, and suddenly my fear won out. "Let me go," I whispered, trying to pull away from him. But Kai just held me tighter, his eyes blazing with a fierce intensity. The blaring sound of my phone ringing resonated through the hallway, and I breathed a sigh of relief as Kai finally released his grip on my chin. I took a step back, my eyes locked on his, and then I turned and walked into my office, shutting the door behind me. As I caught my breath, my phone rang, shrill in the silence. I picked it up, grateful for the distraction. "Hello?" "Bella," my brother's voice came over the line. "Dad's back." My heart leapt with excitement. "Really?" I asked, trying to contain my enthusiasm. "Yeah, he just showed up out of the blue," Ralph said. "I know you've been waiting for this moment, so I thought I'd let you know right away." I felt a wave of relief wash over me. This was exactly what I needed, a distraction from the drama with Kai. "Thanks, Ralph. I'll come home right away." "See you soon," Ralph said, and we hung up. I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of purpose. I grabbed my bag and headed out of the office, ready to face whatever was waiting for me at home. Anything was better than dealing with Kai right now. Bella. The sun hung low on the horizon as Ralph told me what had happened. After the phone call, I rushed over to where Ralph was, and my brother wasted no time to tell me what happened. "Our father is back like I told you over the phone," he said without preamble, his voice sharp and edged with urgency. "And he's already taking action." My whole countenance stilled. "What do you mean?" Ralph ran a hand through his hair, looking both annoyed and impressed. He didn't even wait a full hour after returning to Graywood Pack. He walked straight into the pack house, contract in hand, and confronted Layla in front of everyone. My stomach dropped, my pulse quickening. What contract? The one her father signed years ago, the deal that kept her here all this time. He called for her expulsion, Bella. There wasn't even a discussion. I froze, my hands clutching the helm of my top so tightly that the edges crumpled beneath my fingers. Layla had lived in my shadow for years, but somehow she'd convinced everyone that she deserved my place. She was a replacement, yet it turned to her having a place. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had spent so long feeling like a ghost, hovering at the edges of my family, that hearing this, finally hearing that someone had done something, felt unreal. It was damn time I got my life back. I swallowed hard. "What happened?" Ralph's eyes glinted with satisfaction. "You should have seen it." Father stormed in like a hurricane, completely calm, but unshakable. Layla didn't stand a chance. Earlier that day, Graywood Pack House. Alpha Luther's arrival was announced with the loud thud of the front doors slamming open, echoing like a crack of thunder through the pack house. Members of Graywood Pack turned sharply, startled out of their conversations and daily tasks as their alpha strode inside. The pack had been in a fragile balance during his absence, torn between loyalties, whispered doubts, and Layla's dominance over Luna's attention. But when Luther appeared, it was as though the air itself stilled, waiting to see what would happen next. His expression was unreadable, eyes cold as steel, his jaw tight as he carried himself with quiet authority. In his right hand he clutched a thick leather-bound contract, its edges crumpled from years of disuse. He couldn't believe what he had found out. All these years, all this while, he almost ripped his hair out when he found out what happened to his daughter, his flesh and blood. He thought she was dead, but no, she was alive, being treated like thrash. He wouldn't stand for it. All those who had hurt his daughter would pay, and he would be the punisher. Nothing would happen to her ever again. I saw it in his eyes. Layla and Luna Olive were in the grand sitting room when he found them. Layla sat comfortably in Olive's usual chair, surrounded by a small group of pack members who always seemed to orbit her. Oluwa Olive stood nearby, looking conflicted as ever, her arms crossed over her chest. Alpha? Layla's voice carried a practiced innocence when she spotted him. She stood quickly, her honeyed smile flickering in confusion. "You're back so soon. We weren't expecting you. Be quiet," Luther said sharply. His voice was low, but it cut through the room like a knife. Everyone froze. Layla blinked, startled, her smile faltering. Luna Olive straightened, clearly thrown off by his abrupt demeanor. "Luther," Olive began softly. He ignored her and lifted the contract, holding it out for all to see. "Do you recognize this, Layla?" The room was silent. The look on Layla's face contorted into one of shock, her attempts to keep her composure as her eyes darted to the contract in his hand. She always had a way of talking her way out of things, of twisting truths until she came out looking like the victim. A pathological liar, one would call her. She was so good at it that the truth seemed like a lie every single time. Unlike their mother, her father never tried to replace Bella with Layla. It wasn't possible. He doted on the latter, but fatherly love wasn't possible for him to another man's child. It could never be, and he saw to that. The guilt about his daughter being taken away from him ate him up in such a way that it was like watching a wound fester on the outside, eating the victim slowly till it got to the inside. There was some kind of pain that felt too unholy to preserve, to let in because it could destroy him. Maybe Layla would be able to turn the tides if she got the chance. But this time, Luther didn't let her speak. Maybe, finally, someone had enough of her endless bullshit. "This is the agreement your father signed with Graywood Pack years ago," he continued, his voice a rumble of controlled fury. "This contract granted you sanctuary here, but it came with conditions." Layla opened her mouth to respond, but Luther's gaze sharpened. "Do not interrupt me." She closed it immediately. "You were brought into this pack under the pretense of something I should have never let happen, but desperation makes even the strongest of men do deplorable things, doesn't it?" The bitter smile he gave the girl sent shivers down my spine. Her presence was somewhat of a bandage to heal this family at the time she came. Now, it was a virus spreading and infecting this family until it threatened to ruin it. Luther continued, "You were never meant to rise above my own daughter, to steal her place, to sow division within this family." He turned, addressing the room now. "I may have been away, but I am still the grand alpha of Graywood Pack. I have failed Bella, and I will not allow this mistake to stand any longer." Gasps rippled through the gathered pack members. Layla's composure cracked. "You can't mean that," she said, her voice trembling. "You can't just—" "I can," Luther interrupted, his voice booming now. "And I will." He stepped closer, his towering form making her shrink back instinctively. "You are hereby expelled from Graywood Pack. Your father's deal has no hold here anymore." Layla looked to my mother for help, but Olive didn't move. Her face was pale, her expression torn, but she said nothing. "Leave," Luther finished coldly, "before I decide to enforce your exit myself." "Luna, please!" She turned to the older woman and there was a crack in her expression. "Luther, whatever must have been said to you is not just how it seems. Give the girl a chance to explain. You have been her father for years, and although you share no blood relation, she is still your daughter." Oliver raised her head with indignation. Luther simply shook his head. "Whatever spell she had cast on you is mind-blowing. You will choose her over our own daughter? The daughter you've yearned for years? Are you serious? She has to leave, now. Luther, let her leave on her own, or I'll throw her out myself, and it won't be pretty." He growled, sending shockwaves throughout the room. Tears streamed down Layla's face, and if anybody else were her, they would be scared shitless. Bella. When Ralph finished recounting the story, I sat frozen, my mind struggling to process it. Luther had marched into the pack house like a storm and thrown Layla out without hesitation. For years, I dreamed of someone standing up for me like that, of someone seeing the truth and doing something about it. Now that it had happened, I didn't know what to do with the mix of relief, anger, and confusion swirling inside me. "Where is Layla now?" I asked quietly. "Gone," Ralph said. "She didn't have a choice. Father made sure of that." The air felt heavy between us. I set my notebook aside and stood, brushing my hands against my jeans to keep them steady. "I need to see him." Ralph nodded as though he'd expected this. "He's waiting for you at the pack house." I drove to the pack house, my hands gripping the wheel as I tried to steady my nerves. Luther, my father, had finally acted, and yet I couldn't shake the unease in my chest. This was the man who had been absent from my life for so long, the man who had let Stella claim everything that was supposed to be mine. And now he wanted me back. When I pulled up, Luther was waiting outside the entrance, his shoulders squared and his face unreadable. As I stepped out of the car, he met my gaze, and something in his expression shifted. "Bella," he said softly, as though testing the weight of my name on his tongue. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "You didn't have to do that for me." "Yes, I did. I had waited so long for you. Now seeing you here—" He trailed off, committing every one of my features to memory. The first time we met, it was like this too. He cared for me, and that made my heart warm. I choked on the sob I kept back. He took a step toward me, and for a moment I froze. Luther had always been a figure of strength, this distant, unreachable alpha who never seemed to have time for anyone. But now, there was something else in his eyes, guilt, regret, and a longing I hadn't seen before. "Bella," he said again, his voice low, "I failed you. I should have protected you. I should have been here." I clenched my fists, my vision blurring as tears threatened to fall. "Why now?" "Because I was blind," he admitted, "blind to what was happening right in front of me. But I see it now, and I won't let it continue." The words hit me harder than I expected. Before I knew it, Luther was pulling me into his arms, and this time, I didn't resist. I let him hold me, let the walls I'd built around myself crack just a little. For the first time in years, I felt like someone was fighting for me. I deserved to be fought for. That was the truth, the one that Gray had tried to put a blindfold on. I deserved to be happy, to have all the good things life had to offer. I sunk deeper into the hug, letting his love wash over me. I needed this. When we finally pulled apart, he wiped at his eyes and gave me a small, almost hesitant smile. "You're stronger than I ever realized, Bella. But you don't have to do this alone anymore." I nodded, my voice caught in my throat. As we stepped inside the pack house together, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, something deep and irrevocable. Luther was here, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible. My father wasted no time bombarding me with questions about my life. It was painful, but I recounted everything, not leaving a single detail out. "I wasn't there when those nasty things happened, but I am here now, and I will protect you no matter what it takes, my love," he promised. A promise to cherish me, and I let that glue me back. I smiled at him, feeling grateful. "Good, you're all here." My brothers stood at attention when they finally walked in as my father spoke to them. There was a coldness to his voice that made my scalp tingle. "You are a disgrace to me. How can you fail even to protect your own sister?" The venom in his words seeped into us all. "Do you know what she has gone through? Do you have any idea? Where were you all when it was all happening?" "Dad, we protected her. We tried to." Ralph was the first to speak up, but he held up his hand. "Tried, that's the problem. You tried to protect her, but because she wasn't Layla, you couldn't." The accusations stung the boys. It was like the air was being forced out of their lungs. "That's not true. We didn't fail because she wasn't Layla. We protected Bells like our lives depended on it because we love her." Lennon stepped in, glowering at his father. "You protected her? Is this what you call protection?" he sneered. "Father, please don't fight because of me. I'm fine, really. My brothers love me to the moon and back." I felt embarrassed, caught in the middle of their bickering. My cheeks flushed. I was touched by the love they had for me. I had never felt it before. "I know they do," he began softly. "So does your mother. No one loves you more than your mother. She protects Layla so much because she feels guilty for not being able to protect you. She just needs to hear that it's not her fault. Forgive her. I know she neglected you, but all the emotions she had after losing you were focused on Layla. She couldn't bear to lose another child. I'm sorry for her behavior, but know that she loves you." I was too stunned to speak. The way Luna treated me was unfair, but it was starting to make sense. However, what he was saying and every encounter I had with her clashed. I blinked, unsure of what to say or feel. It was all too much. I was starting to understand, but I needed time. This gave me a new understanding of what my mother was like during my childhood. It still hurt, though. We all sat down in the living room after the reunion. There have been a lot of issues with the border, especially concerning the movement of the witches. It is deeply concerning. I don't know what they are planning, so we need to be ready. My father told Ralph and Lennon with a hardened face. My brothers nodded grimly. What was happening to the borders? What do the witches want? I already have plans for fortifications with the Alpha of Nightshade Pack, Alpha Chi, which will be discussed over a meeting. Alpha Chi? As in Kai Malarkey? There was a sharp pang in my heart as I heard his name. The pain must have reflected on my face because my father was staring intently at me. He asked gently, "Are you all right? Is there something between you and Alpha Chi that I should know about?" "Bella." I took a deep breath and began to tell my father everything. His expression darkened with each passing word, his eyes blazing with fury. He listened intently, his jaw clenched and his fists curled into tight balls. As I spoke, I could see the anger building inside him. His face reddened and his eyes seemed to burn with an inner fire. I could feel the tension emanating from him like a palpable force that filled the room. "How dare he?" Luther growled, his voice low and menacing. "I'll kill him." He slammed his fist onto the armrest, making me jump. His eyes flashed with a fierce light, and I could see the wolf in him straining to break free. I placed a hand on his arm, trying to calm him down. "Father, please. You can't just—" "I can do whatever I want," he snapped, his face reddening further. "He's crossed a line, Bella. No one touches my daughter and gets away with it." His voice was rising, and I could feel the anger and protectiveness emanating from him. I swallowed hard, feeling a sense of trepidation. Tomorrow's meeting with Kai was going to be a disaster. I could already imagine the tension and hostility that would fill the room. "Father, I want to be present at the meeting tomorrow," I said, trying to sound calm despite the fear that was growing inside me. Luther's expression turned incredulous. "Absolutely not," he said, his voice firm and unyielding. "You're not going anywhere near that animal." He spat out the word, his face twisted in disgust. I stood my ground, despite the fear that was growing inside me. "I need to be there, Father. I need to face him." I felt a surge of determination and courage. I wasn't going to let Kai get away with what he had done. Luther's face darkened further, his eyes flashing with anger. "You'll do no such thing," he growled. "I won't let you anywhere near him. You're my daughter, and I won't let anyone hurt you again." His voice was rising, and I could feel the protectiveness and anger emanating from him. I felt a surge of frustration, but I knew better than to push my father when he was in this mood. I just have to find another way to get to that meeting. As we sat in the living room, surrounded by the warm glow of the evening lights, I watched as they talked about tomorrow's meeting without me. I have to be at the damn meeting. But how? The idea clicked, and I recoiled in my seat before I dropped a casual bombshell. "You know, I can tell when someone's lying," I said, trying to sound nonchalant despite the excitement brewing inside me. My father's and brother's heads snapped towards me, their eyes wide with surprise. Luther's eyebrows shot up, and Ralph's mouth hung open in astonishment. Lennon's eyes sparkled with curiosity, and Hunter's face lit up with interest. "What do you mean?" Luther asked, his voice tinged with curiosity and a hint of skepticism. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, and his eyes locked intently on mine. I shrugged, trying to appear nonchalant despite the excitement brewing inside me. "I can just tell. I've always been able to sense it. I don't know how to explain it, but I can feel when someone's not telling the truth." Ralph's eyes lit up with excitement. "That's amazing, Bella. Can you demonstrate?" he asked, his voice filled with enthusiasm. Lennon grinned mischievously. "Yeah, let's test her. I'll start. My favorite color is black," he said, trying to sound convincing, but I could see the hint of a smile playing on his lips. I raised an eyebrow. "That's a lie," I said confidently, a small smile playing on my lips. Lennon burst out laughing. "How did you know? I've always said my favorite color is black," he exclaimed. I smiled. "I just know." "You're not very good at lying, Lennon," I teased, playfully rolling my eyes. Luther's eyes sparkled with amusement. "All right, let's try another one. I have a secret. I once accidentally superglued my shoes to the floor during a pack meeting," he said, trying to sound serious, but his eyes twinkled with mirth. I giggled. "That's true," I said, laughing at the mental image. The room erupted in laughter, with my brothers and father guffawing at the absurdity of the situation. Hunter was laughing so hard he was crying, and Ralph was holding his stomach in laughter. Lennon was grinning from ear to ear, and Luther was chuckling, his eyes shining with amusement. When the laughter subsided, I turned serious. "You know, I think I might be useful at the meeting tomorrow. I can tell if Kai is lying or not," I said, my voice filled with determination. Luther's expression turned thoughtful, and he nodded. "You're right, Bella. Your talent could be invaluable. You're sly, aren't you?" He said it with a playful smile, his eyes twinkling with amusement. I grinned. "Maybe a little," I said, feeling a sense of pride and accomplishment. Luther chuckled. "All right, you can join us at the meeting, but stay close to me and your brothers. We don't know what Kai is capable of," he said, his expression turning serious. I nodded, feeling a sudden surge of nerves. That night, the pack gathered in the grand hall for a ceremony that would officially welcome me as a member of the Ashwood Pack. The air was filled with excitement and anticipation as I stood before my father, who smiled warmly at me. With a gentle touch, Luther placed his hands on my shoulders, and I felt a surge of energy run through me. The pack's mind link, which had been closed off to me for so long, began to hum with activity. I felt the presence of my pack members, their thoughts and emotions flooding into my mind. As the link solidified, I felt a deep sense of connection to the people around me. It was as if I had finally found my place, my sense of belonging. Luther raised his glass, and the room fell silent. "To my dear daughter Bella," he began, his voice filled with emotion. "I missed you so much, baby girl. I'm so happy to see you again after all these years." His eyes shone with tears as he gazed at me. "You're talented, beautiful, and strong. I'm so proud of the woman you've become." I felt a warmth spread through my chest, and even my wolf basked in the praise. I smiled, feeling special and loved. The room erupted in cheers and applause as Luther handed me a glass. "Welcome to the pack, Bella," he said, smiling. I took a sip, feeling the cool liquid slide down my throat. As I looked around the room, I knew that I had finally found my home. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of nervousness that rivaled the anxiety I had felt before Cora's surgery. This was my first alpha meeting, and I had no idea what to expect. I took calming breaths as I slipped into a simple yet elegant dress, trying to shake off the butterflies in my stomach. As I entered the meeting room, I was immediately struck by the somber atmosphere. Everybody was already seated, their faces serious and intent. I skillfully avoided Kai's gaze, not wanting to engage with him just yet, but his imposing presence wasn't lost on me. He seemed to fill the entire room with his dominant energy, making my skin prickle with unease. I took the empty seat between my father and Lennon, trying to compose myself. My father placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder, giving it a gentle squeeze. "Let's get started," he announced, his voice firm and authoritative. The room fell silent, with all eyes fixed on my father. I could feel Kai's gaze on me, but I refused to meet it, keeping my eyes fixed on the table instead. My heart was racing, and my palms were sweating, but I was determined to stay calm and composed. After all, I was a member of the Ashwood Pack now, and I needed to prove myself. The meeting began, and my father, Alpha Luther, took charge, his voice firm and commanding. "Alpha Kai, I'd like to discuss the recent movement of witches along our borders. Can you tell me about the security measures you've put in place to ensure the safety of our packs?" Kai nodded, his expression serious. "Of course, Alpha Luther. We've increased our patrols and surveillance, and we're working closely with the witches to ensure they're not a threat to either of our packs." Through the mind link, I confirmed the authenticity of Kai's reply. To my surprise, he spoke the truth. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of curiosity. What was Kai's true motive? My father asked another question. How do you plan to handle any potential conflicts that may arise between our packs and the witches? Kai's beta, a tall, imposing man with a stern expression, spoke up. We've established a clear communication channel with the witches, and we're working together to establish a mutually beneficial agreement. We're confident that we can resolve any conflicts peacefully. Again, I sensed no deception through the mind link. Kai and his beta were telling the truth. My father nodded, a hint of a smile on his face. I'm impressed, Alpha Kai. You seem to be paying more attention to Ashwood Pack's well-being than even my own son, Lennon. He glanced at Lennon, who looked sheepish, and certainly more than Xavier, who's been absent for most of the discussions. The meeting drew to a close, and my father turned to Kai once more. One final question, Alpha Kai. Are any of your actions connected to my daughter Bella? Kai's expression turned neutral, and he shook his head. No, Alpha Luther. My actions are solely driven by the need to protect my pack and our interests. My heart skipped a beat. He lied. Bella. I hesitated for a moment, weighing my options. If I revealed that Kai had lied, it could escalate the tension between our packs. But if I kept quiet, it could put my pack in danger. I decided to tell a white lie, hoping it would diffuse the situation. Through the mind link, I communicated my fabricated confirmation. Kai spoke the truth, I said, trying to sound convincing. The room seemed to relax, with the tension easing as everyone confirmed Kai's intention for a collaboration. My father's expression turned thoughtful, and he nodded. Very well, Alpha Kai. It seems we have a mutually beneficial opportunity ahead of us. Lennon and the others nodded in agreement, their faces no longer set in opposition. Kai's expression remained neutral. Kai's expression turned smug as he announced, I'll be staying in New York to accompany my mate. His voice was laced with a possessive tone, and his eyes gleamed with a sense of triumph. Lennon's eyes narrowed, his face darkening with anger. His jaw clenched and his fists curled into tight balls. You're not fooling anyone, Kai, he growled, his voice low and menacing. We all know you're just looking for measures to hover around my sister, even when she's repeatedly told you she wants you away from her. Kai's smile grew wider, his eyes glinting with amusement. He leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers together as he regarded Lennon with a condescending gaze. Oh, I'm shaking in my boots, Lennon, he said in a provocative tone, his voice dripping with nonchalance. You think you can dictate who I spend my time with? Newsflash, Lennon, I'm an alpha, and I do what I want. Lennon's face turned red with rage, and he took a step forward, his fists clenched. His eyes blazed with fury, and his voice was barely above a whisper. You're pushing your luck, Kai, he snarled, his words dripping with venom. I challenge you to a duel. Let's settle this once and for all. The room fell silent, with all eyes fixed on Lennon and Kai. I felt a surge of fear, knowing that a duel between the two alphas could have disastrous consequences. My heart was racing, and my palms were sweating as I watched the scene unfold. My father's expression turned grave, and he stood up, his hands raised in a calming gesture. Lennon, wait, he said, his voice firm but controlled. Let's not be hasty. A duel is not the answer here. But Lennon was beyond reason. His anger and protectiveness towards me had reached a boiling point, and he was determined to see this through. No, father, he said, his voice firm. I've had enough of Kai's games. It's time someone taught him a lesson. Kai's smile never wavered, but his eyes gleamed with a fierce light. He stood up, his movements fluid and menacing. I'm more than happy to oblige, Lennon, he said, his voice dripping with anticipation. Let's end this. Hunter and Xavier tried to intervene, placing a calming hand on Lennon's shoulder and speaking in soothing tones. Lennon, come on, man. Fighting isn't the answer here, Hunter said, his voice reasonable. But Lennon shook them off, his eyes blazing with anger. I've had enough of his games, he growled, his voice low and menacing. Kai, on the other hand, seemed to be enjoying the exchange. He leaned against the table, a smirk playing on his lips. You're so predictable, Lennon, he said, his voice dripping with amusement. I'm starting to think you're more bark than bite. Ralph stepped forward, his voice authoritative as he intervened. That's enough, both of you. Quit acting like children, he said, his eyes flashing with annoyance. Lennon turned to him, his voice deliberate and provocative. I'm not the one hovering over someone's sister like a list puppy. But to my surprise, Kai didn't rise to the bait. Instead, he shook his head and took his seat calmly, his expression serene. "I think we've discussed this enough for today," he said, his voice smooth. The tension in the room slowly began to dissipate, and after a while, Ralph suggested, "You know what? I think we need a break. Before we start working on border security, let's take a family trip. Let's go to the beach. We can relax, have some fun, and come back refreshed and ready to tackle the task ahead." The room fell silent as everyone considered Ralph's suggestion. I could see the tension in my brother's shoulders begin to ease, and even my father's expression softened. "That's not a bad idea, Ralph," he said, nodding. "We could all use a break." Kai nodded in agreement with Ralph's suggestion. "A family trip sounds like a great idea. I'm in." But Lennon's expression turned even darker. "No way," he growled, his voice firm. "He's not coming with us." I sighed, feeling a surge of frustration. "Lennon, that's enough," I said, my voice firm. "This passive-aggressive behavior is getting frustrating. It's okay for Kai to come with us." Lennon's eyes flashed with anger, but I stood my ground. "I think it's a good idea, actually," I continued. "It's a way of expressing gratitude to Kai for his help with the witches. Don't you think so?" Kai's eyes met mine, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of surprise. But then his expression smoothed out, and he nodded graciously. "Thank you, Bella. I appreciate your hospitality." Lennon stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him. My father sighed, rubbing his temples. "I think that's enough for today." Meeting adjourned. The room began to clear out, with everyone murmuring and casting nervous glances at Kai and me. My brothers filed out, their faces somber, and my father followed them, his expression thoughtful. As the door closed behind them, I was left alone with Kai. He turned to me, his eyes gleaming with a mixture of curiosity and intensity. "Bella, can we—" I shook my head, cutting him off. "No, Kai. Inviting you to our outing was exactly what I said it was, an expression of gratitude. Don't read more into it than that." Kai's expression didn't change, but I sensed a flicker of disappointment behind his eyes. I pressed on, my voice firm. "There will be boundaries, Kai, and it would be wise of you to abandon any unrealistic hopes. I'm not interested in rekindling anything between us." Kai's gaze locked onto mine, his eyes burning with an inner fire. For a moment, I thought I saw a glimmer of something there, something that looked almost like longing, but then it was gone, replaced by his usual mask of calm. "I understand, Bella," he said, his voice smooth. "I'll respect your boundaries." "Layla." I stood before the council, my heart racing with anxiety as I pleaded for Alexander's release. My voice trembled as I spoke, my words pouring out in a desperate bid to persuade them. "Please, honorable members of the council, I beg of you, have mercy on Alexander. He didn't mean to cause harm. It was an accident, a mistake. He's willing to make amends, to do whatever it takes to make things right." I fell to my knees, my hands clasped together in a desperate prayer. Tears streamed down my face as I begged, my voice cracking with emotion. "Please, don't take him away from me. I'll do anything. Just please." One of the council members, a stern-looking woman with a harsh expression, gazed at me with a mixture of pity and disdain. "Layla, you know as well as we do that the laws are clear. An alpha's offspring is held to a higher standard. Alexander's actions have consequences, and he must face them." I felt a sob rising up in my throat, and I couldn't hold it back. I wept, great racking sobs that shook my entire body. I felt like I was losing Alexander all over again, like I was watching him slip away from me, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. The council members exchanged sympathetic glances, but their expressions remained firm. They couldn't be swayed by my tears, no matter how much I begged. I knew it, and yet I couldn't help but try. I finally realized that my pleas were falling on deaf ears. I wiped my tears with the back of my hand and stood up, my legs shaking beneath me. I took a deep breath and tried to compose myself, my voice barely above a whisper. Is it possible for me to see him? To meet Alexander at the prison?" The council members exchanged glances, and one of them nodded. "Very well, we can arrange for you to visit him, but please be aware that the prison is a place of punishment, not comfort. You will be escorted at all times, and your visit will be monitored." I nodded, relief washing over me. "Thank you," I said, my voice sincere. I just need to see him to make sure he's okay. One of the guards stepped forward, his expression impassive. "Follow me," he said, gesturing for me to follow him. I nodded and trailed behind him, my heart pounding in my chest. We walked through a series of corridors and doors, each one leading deeper into the heart of the prison. The air grew colder and more oppressive, and I could feel the weight of the prison's history bearing down on me. Finally, we stopped in front of a heavy metal door. The guard produced a key and unlocked the door, pushing it open with a creak. "You have 30 minutes, he said, his voice firm. "Do not attempt to leave the cell or communicate with anyone else. Do you understand?" I nodded, my heart racing with anticipation. "Yes, I understand." The guard stepped aside, and I took a deep breath before stepping into the cell. As I stepped into the cell, my eyes scanned the dimly lit space, searching for Alexander. The air was thick with the smell of disinfectant and something else, something acrid that made my stomach turn. I could hear the distant sound of footsteps echoing down the corridor, the clang of metal doors slamming shut. But in this cell there was only silence. And then I saw him. He was standing on the other side of a transparent wall, his eyes cast down at the floor. My heart skipped a beat as I took in his appearance. He was dressed in the standard black attire of the prison, the fabric worn and faded. His hair was disheveled and tangled, his beard grown out in a wild tangle that framed his gaunt face. He looked broken. I felt a pang of sorrow and regret as I gazed at him. How did it come to this? Alexander, the strong and confident alpha, reduced to a shadow of his former self. I called out his name softly, my voice barely above a whisper. "Alexander?" He looked up, his eyes meeting mine through the transparent wall. For a moment I thought I saw a flicker of recognition, of warmth. His eyes seemed to soften, his gaze locking onto mine with a sense of longing. But then his face contorted into a frown, his eyes flashing with anger. "What are you doing here?" he growled, his voice low and menacing. "You shouldn't be here." I took a step forward, my hand reaching out to touch the transparent wall. "Alexander, I'm going to get you out of here," I said, my voice firm. "I promise. I'll do whatever it takes to." But Alexander's expression only darkened. He slammed his fist against the transparent wall, making me jump. The sound echoed through the cell, a loud crash that seemed to shake the very foundations of the prison. "You're a witch!" he screamed, his voice echoing off the walls. "Get out! Get out of here! You're just going to make things worse." I was shocked by the sudden outburst, and I stumbled backward, my mind reeling. Alexander's words cut deep, and I felt a wave of dizziness wash over me. I tried to speak, to tell him that I was there to help, but my voice caught in my throat. Alexander's face twisted in a snarl, his eyes blazing with fury. He pounded on the transparent wall again, the sound making me flinch. "Get out!" he screamed again. "Leave me alone!" I felt tears pricking at the corners of my eyes as I gazed at Alexander. He was so angry, so hurt, and I didn't know how to reach him, how to make him see that I was there to help. The last thing I remembered was the sound of Alexander's angry voice, the sight of his twisted face, and then everything went black. As I slowly came to, I was greeted by the concerned face of Luna Olive. She was sitting beside me, her eyes red-rimmed and her expression somber. "Mom," I called out, my voice soft and weak. Luna Olive's face crumpled, and she reached out to take my hand in hers. "Layla, I'm so glad you're awake," she said, her voice trembling. "I was so worried about you." I noticed the look on her face and asked, "What's wrong, Mom?" Luna Olive's eyes filled with tears, and she took a deep breath before speaking. "You lost the baby, Layla," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm so sorry." I refused to believe her, shaking my head repeatedly as tears cascaded down my cheeks. "No, no, no," I whispered, my voice cracking with grief. "This can't be happening." Luna Olive comforted me, holding me close as I wept. After a while, I composed myself enough to speak. "Mom, I don't know how much more of this I can take," I said, my voice shaking. "First Alexander, and now this. I feel like I'm losing everything." Luna Olive's expression softened, and she stroked my hair. "I know, baby. I know, but we'll get through this together." I looked up at her, my eyes pleading. "Mom, please, you have to help me. I need Alexander. I need him to be okay, if I lose him too." My voice trailed off, and I felt a sob rising up in my throat. Luna Olive's expression changed, and I saw a flash of regret and sympathy on her face. "Layla, She hesitated, then nodded. I'll release Alexander. I'll do it for you, 'cause I know how much he means to you. I felt a surge of hope and gratitude, and I reached out to hug Luna Olive tightly. Thank you, Mom, I whispered, my voice filled with emotion. Thank you so much. As I lay, wrapped up in my mother's arms, my mind began to wander. I couldn't help but think of Bella, and how she seemed to be the root of all my problems. If she hadn't come into our lives, Alexander wouldn't be in prison. I wouldn't have been thrown out of the pack, and I wouldn't have lost my baby. I felt a surge of anger and resentment towards her, and I wished that she would somehow disappear from the earth's surface. Just as I was getting lost in my thoughts, Luna Olive interrupted me. Layla, sweetie, I have some news to share with you, she said, her voice gentle. I turned to her, my expression still dark. What is it, Mom? I asked, my voice flat. Luna Olive hesitated, looking guilty. Well, the family is planning a trip to the beach. We're all going to spend some time together, relax, and have some fun. I raised an eyebrow, intrigued despite myself. A family trip? I repeated, my voice a little stronger. Luna Olive nodded, filling me in on all the details. Yes, we're all going to go together. Bella and Kai are coming too. As she spoke, an idea began to form in my head. It was a plan, a way to get back at Bella and make her pay for everything she'd done to me. But I needed to speak with Alexander first, to make sure he was on board. I smiled to myself, a cold, calculating smile. This was going to be fun. You're crazy to think that I'll be in cahoots with you and try to harm Bella, Alexander said, his voice firm and resolute. I felt a surge of anger and betrayal. How can you say that? I spat, my voice venomous. After everything Bella has done to us? She's ruined our lives, Alexander. She's taken everything from us. Alexander's expression softened, and he took a step closer to me. Layla, listen to me. Bella is the true heir of the Ashwood Pack. She's the one who's now of use to me, not you. And the only plan I should be hatching is how to get her back, not how to harm her. I was livid. How could he betray me like that? I grabbed him by the collar, my fingers digging deep into his skin. How could you do this to me, Alexander? I screamed, my voice echoing off the walls. How could you choose her over me? Alexander's eyes flashed with anger, and he pushed me away so hard that I fell to the ground. I landed with a thud, the wind knocked out of me. Alexander squatted down beside me, his eyes blazing with intensity. He grasped my chin in a tight grip, his fingers digging into my skin. I'm grateful that the child is dead, he hissed, his voice venomous. There's no connection between us now. You're free, Layla, free to move on with your life. And with that, he stood up and walked out of the room, leaving me stunned and heartbroken. I lay there for a moment, my mind reeling with anger and hurt, and then a cold, calculating determination crept over me. I swore to myself that Bella wouldn't return from that trip. Not if it was the last thing I did. I would make sure of it, no matter what it took.